when most white children in London achieved 5 GCSEs graded C or above, 3/4 of Afro-Caribbean black boys didn't even come close.
Such is my level of concern that I think that we're definitely looking at a rerun of civil disturbances in 5 or 10 years' time if this crisis is really not dealt with.
If white boys were underachieving on the same levels as black boys, there would be people would be rioting in the street.
The GCSE results of Afro-Caribbean boys show a worrying trend. This summer, over 75% of them have not got the grades that will get them jobs or places at college. In today's London programme, we ask, who's to blame? 51% of Britain's kids got 5 Cs or above at GCSE last year. However, some ethnic groups perform far better than others. While just over half of white kids reached the benchmark level, Chinese and Indian children did even better. Amongst those underachieving are Bangladeshi children, 44%, and Pakistani and black African kids at 41%. But these are not the lowest figures. Right at the bottom of the table are Afro-Caribbean children at 30%. And this group hides an even more dismal statistic. Fewer than 1 in 4 boys get the grades. As London is home to 70% of the UK students of Afro-Caribbean origin, this is a big problem for the capital.
We're talking about a crisis situation. Our recent research has indicated that 80% of all Afro-Caribbean youth, and particularly our boys, will be leaving school this summer with GCSE level results below C, if at all.
What's often missed in all of this is that there's increasing evidence now that the attainments of black pupils are actually quite high when they enter school aged 5. In some parts of the country, they're the highest achieving group when they enter the school system, but their relative achievements then fall away in comparison with other groups as they move through the school system.
And the situation gets worse. The fairness of the system is challenged by the disproportionately high number of official exclusions. Black pupils are around 4 times more likely to be formally excluded from mainstream education.
The statistics actually understate how bad it is, because we have very high levels, not just of exclusion, but unofficial exclusion. And I suspect if you could account for every single black school-aged child in the society, you'd find the attainment levels were even lower than the statistics show.
Low attainment levels and high exclusion rates go hand in hand. Professor Gilbourne has been studying this issue for the last 20 years. He believes that a lot of the exclusions of black pupils are unjustified.
It's not kids throwing chairs around the room or beating up teachers. I mean, clearly that kind of activity is very extreme. But the majority of permanent exclusions are not for things like that. The majority of exclusions are to do with a perception that the relationship between the pupil and the school has broken down. And again, those perceptions differ for different ethnic groups.
While everyone agrees there's major cause for concern, there's no consensus over the roots of the problem, with arguments over the significance of parental involvement, schools and youth culture.
Why you be hating is money I'm making. I'm demonstrating your honey I'm taking. I talk now.
The kings in the playground and the paupers in the classroom. What I mean by that is that this drive to act out a certain behaviour, a certain type of attitude is there and is real.
Well, I think there's no doubt that part of the complex explanation for some of the achievement gaps that we have is to do with different cultural pressures that people face.
Youth culture offers alternative and more attractive role models than those provided by the school system. But does this image put kids off their schoolwork?
Why on earth do I need to work hard at school when I can get all these things in one instant? yeah, which is the message basically of black youth culture at the moment. I don't see any other message coming out of that. That wasn't the case before, it is the case now. To argue that that doesn't influence young minds is nonsense.
But does black popular culture and the lifestyles of a few rappers really affect the attainment levels of black pupils in London? After all, white pupils buy the records too.
I'm amazed it's being applied specifically to Afro-Caribbean boys.
I mean, white working class culture is not exactly committed to high educational standards.
Poor communities have, short-term aspirations for material possession, trying to fill a void in their lives that cannot be filled otherwise through long-term career development or delayed gratification. These things are well known to us. They don't just apply to Afro-Caribbean youth.
But if black street culture alone isn't to blame, it still celebrates a lifestyle that's sometimes on the wrong side of the law.
They will all grow up to be criminals, they'll all grow up to steal, and they won't have a real proper job, and they'll probably most go to prison.
They never say anything about the black boys being smart. They just talk about the failures and the people who drop out and do bad stuff on the street. That's why it's like a prototype for black boys to fail in school. But then the ones who do pass in school, nothing's said about them.
The feeling is you will run into a rebuff, that they will, as long as you've got a black skin, they will always get you and they will always shut you out. So the mentality is, what is the point?
Too often we hear the anecdotes that they should be doing sports rather than doing physics, and those things stick. And it's those lack of expectations, the lack of role models to which the children can think to attain. If they look into society and they don't see black role models, lawyers, doctors, solicitors, dentists, architects.
Paul Lawrence is part of a mentoring scheme called the 100 Black Men of London. They aim to provide positive role models for black children.
If all they see through the media are rappers, sportsmen, that's all they'll think they can attain. I can't rap and I can't run. So where does that leave me? And that's what the young children are thinking.
In America, the issue of black underachievement is taken more seriously than here in the UK. When Dr. Richard Majors came over 7 years ago, he was shocked to find a culture of denial about the extent of the UK problem.
But to understand these values and use those to your benefit in the curriculum, says is that 70% of the dialogue between teacher and child is negative. Yelling, screaming, shut up, sit down, not.
He feels that kids are turning their backs on the system and that the reasons for this lie within the system itself.
It's one of those cozy issues. It's one of those safe issues. Oftentimes they become involved in alternative kinds of lifestyles and behaviors as a way to give them a sense of a recognition, a sense of power. As artificial as it may be, it does give them a real sense that they are somebody. And I think this is because we deny them that opportunities in these legitimate kind of forms like the classroom.
Many teachers point to the home environment as influencing black underachievement.
If you don't come from a parental background where there's a love of education, where there are books on the shelves, where there's a discussion about learning, whether there's an idea that learning will advance you later on in life, then you're at a disadvantage. And all the international research confirms that.
The support mechanism for those children who do well in the system is the clear variable to making success in our system.
So middle-class children do better because of strong parental involvement. Is this the key factor in black underachievement?
What is clear to me is that when we come and look at the Black Caribbean group, they haven't got that in terms of a resource.
Do you think it's important, honey?
At the 100 Black Men of London workshops, parents are encouraged to come along and support their children. These mothers feel exasperated at the charge that they are a factor in their children's underachievement.
It's not that black parents aren't getting involved in their children's education. We are very involved in our children's education. But I know a lot of parents are at a loss really what to do, because if you teach them at home, they get to such a level. With me, I just stopped teaching my child at home because he'll be so advanced at school that he'll just be getting into more trouble because he'll be becoming more disruptive within the class because he's way past the work that they're already teaching him.
Well, one of the reasons why I strongly believe that it's not all about a home environment is by virtue of my own personal experience.
I don't think putting all the emphasis on the home can work. After all, our children are educated in school.
Despite having a stable family, despite having support in relation to education, you know, my secondary school virtually destroyed any hope I have of being a success. I was told at school, you will go to jail, you are a violent thug, as are all the black boys in this school. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of stereotypical assumption and categorization that has a powerful reinforcing factor for the behavior of those black boys at that school.
We're not really given that, you know, fresh, clean opportunity to just walk into a classroom and do and, like, you know, work to our potential. We're basically being held back by that stereotypical view of us, you know, and it's really hard to come out of it, so I think it is a significant factor.
It's too easy to say there's something innate about black children why they fail. We have to look at the system.
The education system has very much preferred to look for excuses outside the classroom. They try to blame black families, black students, black peer group culture. There's a resistance to actually looking at what the education system itself is doing.
It is not just a matter of their backgrounds, it is not just a matter of what happens to them in the streets, it's not just a matter of expectations. It is something to do with their encounter with schools. We know they go in way ahead on their reading scores, we know they come out way behind. Something happens around about 9, 10, 11 years old, which really sends them over the edge of a cliff, plummeting in their levels of attainment.
Study after study has shown that Afro-Caribbean boys are underachieving. 3/4 will leave school without the qualifications they need to get ahead. Some experts believe that the education system itself is to blame.
Common sense suggests that if children's educational performance collapses between the ages of 5 and 16, you have to think about where were they between the ages of 5 and 16. They were in school.
We believe that they are being treated differently and unfairly by teachers, and we believe it has a lot to do with racism.
I find that teachers react extremely badly to the idea that there might be any relationship to black children failing in school and what teachers are doing.
Well, I think institutionalised racism in terms of education is almost a racism that dare not speak its name.
For once, if the teaching profession would accept that they have some responsibility for what has taken place with these black children, then we could be in quite different grounds. And that, in a sense, is the battle I'm fighting now. To say to the teaching profession, to schools, you do bear a responsibility, you can do better, focus on what you can do, instead of constantly saying you can't do anything because of the material you're presented with. Because that just says to the child, actually that's what makes the child feel that they're blamed. It says to the child, we're doing our best as teachers, but actually you're so crap, we can never make you better.
The vast bulk of research that takes these issues seriously in this country and in North America demonstrates very clearly that white teachers on the whole tend to view black students as being less likely to be high achievers, but more likely to be troublemakers, and that they deal with them in relation to those expectations.
Teachers can't identify with my culture and things like that. Not my culture, but the way I was raised up, basically, the way I walk, for example, and how I wear my trousers and everything. So little petty things like that, I'll get in trouble for it.
I think stereotypes do overall play a very important role in how black people are taught and black children are taught in schools.
They think black boys are mostly the people that commit crimes.
Many in education would disagree with accusations of institutional racism.
I find the term institutional racism difficult to understand. I think even if you can understand it, it's unhelpful. I think it's far better to look at what can be done in terms of changes to the management, the running of schools, and to the practice in classrooms, rather than to take refuge in labels or slurs, which teachers quite understandably resent deeply.
If you tell people that you're institutionally racist, they'll be on the defensive.
While the row rages on, some believe that even the debate itself can be counterproductive.
I think we're sending some wrong messages to some of our children. I think we're saying that it's to do with a bunch of racist teachers that are in our schools, and somehow I'm going to have to sort of defend my turf. And I think that's the wrong message.
Whatever the strengths of individual teachers, questions need to be asked of a system that clearly disadvantages black children.
Now, in mathematics, there are 3 tiers, and if you're unfortunate enough to be entered in the bottom tier, the best you can get is a D. Doesn't matter if you get every question right, if you're sitting that paper, the best you can get is a D, which for most people is considered not good enough. And we found that not only were black students more likely to be placed in the bottom tier, but that actually in the schools that we looked at, 2 out of 3 black pupils were placed on the foundation tier in mathematics. Now that means that before they even put their name on their answer sheet, they know that they can't get the grade C or above, which everybody takes to be the minimum acceptable levels.
With the system stacked against black children, how likely is it that we can reverse the trend of underachievement?
I'm not optimistic in view of the record of all previous governments on this issue, where people have said that they're very concerned, but they've largely been unwilling to take action which is dedicated to closing the inequalities of attainment, for fear of upsetting teachers, for fear of upsetting white groups who fear that they're being penalised. These are very complicated issues, and you can't make anti-racism a reality simply by passing a law. You have to work with lots of different groups, and it's very difficult. But the evidence is that it can be done.
In the past, the emphasis has been on making the curriculum more relevant.
Our boys are fairly lively. They've got a high energy rate, and it has to be accommodated. One has to find ways of giving release to that energy. They are high energy and they are highly creative in terms of the arts and performance and language and so on and so forth. And that has to be accommodated in order that they can settle down in school and get on with the job at hand. And so having a curricula that meets their needs, that are culturally defined within them, is a prerequisite.
It would be nice if there was more in the curriculum about black history and literature, but I would stress that what ordinary black parents really want is not a different curriculum. They want their children to access the mainstream curriculum. In other words, black parents don't want to be palmed off with sort of steel drums and lessons in cooking curry. What they want is for their children to achieve the same academic standards as other children.
The most significant thing, I think, that you've got to answer if you think that the real issue is, there's not enough blackness in the curriculum, is, if that's the case, why is it that Indian children and Chinese children are outperforming the average white child, and certainly the black, Pakistani and Bangladeshi child? So, though I don't think it's an irrelevant issue, I think its significance is being massively overstated.
So what's the secret? The issue may be complex, but some believe that the solution is simple.
There's no real mystery here. I mean, the schools that are succeeding are invariably schools that have got strong leadership, a head teacher, man or woman, who sets high standards and who really expects their children to achieve. And then those high expectations are translated into consistently effective teaching in every classroom, in every subject. And the boys and the girls know that they can't get away with underperformance.
They want tough love, but they also want fairness. We can look at all the different kinds of explanations of why these children aren't doing well. But the bottom line is this: until we have policies that focus on the structure, the schools and the teachers, we're not going to have any changes.
Indeed, Archbishop Tennyson's school in Kennington has witnessed success on this very basis. In 1996, only 1% of its boys gained 5 GCSEs graded C or above.
The first notice this morning is to congratulate the Year 7 group who went with Mr Davis to the Duxford.
Headmaster Brian Jones remembers the atmosphere when he arrived.
Mr Davis said,
when I first came here, there was a totally negative attitude and catcalls and whistles when anybody was mentioned or given something. So we had to overcome that negative attitude. It can be fought, it can be overcome. It's creating a positive climate in the school where children's work is recognised, and when it's good, they're praised.
Brian Jones and his deputy, Louise Fox, have presided over one of the most impressive improvements in London. Last year, 75% of the school's Afro-Caribbean children achieved 5 or more C to A stars at GCSE. Black children are not just equaling other groups, they're outperforming them.
The most important thing is to ensure that the children are taught well by good teachers. And obviously that implies that the teachers have got high expectations, and that in the school there is a proper learning environment, a safe, secure environment, which is well structured and well disciplined. If you've got those in place, then children are more likely to succeed, black or white.
If you get rid of the stereotype, people will think that it's not true, so people will try to achieve more. That stereotype doesn't happen in the school because people try to achieve their potential in the school.
They tell you what they want to be expected of you. Like when I was in year assembly the other day, my head of year was saying, if some boy is at a level 6 and he gets a level 6 and that's the highest in the school, and I was at a level 3 and then I get a level 4, I'll get more praise than he would because I have gone above my own level.
But is Archbishop Tennyson's the exception to the rule? If some schools can achieve great results, why can't others? In May 2002, the Commission for Racial Equality was given powers to come down on schools that do not deliver for black children, and it intends to use them.
We've had many, many years of teachers saying, well, it's all terrible, we wish it was better, but you know, look at the homes they come from, look at the fact that they're one-parent families, and so forth. And we've had many years of everybody, including people like myself, saying, you know, we really want it to be better. We really want to do that. Actually, that is no use to a black child. What he or she needs is not good wishes, hand-wringing, worrying. What he or she needs is 5, 6, 7 good GCSEs and 3 good A-levels that will get them into university. So what I've said is that what we are going to be judging people by is not the degree to which they express anxiety, concern and desire to do better. We will judge them by the results.
You know, for me, the term by any means necessary comes to mind, and we have to do whatever we have to do. They are our children.